Okay, let's get into it. Today we're taking a deep dive into Mongolia. Fascinating place, often, caught between these two giants, Russia and China. You've shared a stack of sources. And what really comes through is a country at a really pivotal moment.
Yeah.
It's navigating this whirlwind of economic shifts, political changes, social challenges, kind of grappling with huge potential against some pretty stubborn realities.
Absolutely. And what's striking in the sources is this sense of a crucial reckoning for Mongolia. It's a story, really, of ambition clashing with the pretty harsh fiscal reality. And often it's the internal stuff, policy friction, political indecision that's as big a hurdle as, say, global market forces. We're going to try and connect the dots for you today between the mineral wealth, the politics, and what it actually means for people living there.
All right, so our mission today is to cut through the noise, give you a clear picture of the key forces shaping Mongolia's future. We'll touch on everything from gold mining, or the lack of it, to air pollution in the capital. What does it all mean for Mongolia's goals, its aspirations? So let's start with the economy. The sources really paint it as a bit of a tightrope walk, wouldn't you say?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
There's this ambitious Gold 3 program, for instance, a government plan to really ramp up gold production. But sounds like it hit a snag.
It definitely did. A big one, actually. Despite the gold deliveries to Mongol Bank, the central bank, in the first half of 2025, they fell. Fell by a staggering 24.3% compared to the year before, only 5.9 tons.
Wow, 24%. What does that mean in, dollar terms?
Well, you're looking at a potential loss of around $170 million in foreign exchange compared to the 7.8 tons the year before. And that's even with gold prices pretty high, around $2,800 an ounce. And the sources are quite clear. It's not because the gold isn't there. It's down to, and they use these terms, policy friction and political indecision.
That's incredible. The gold's there, but politics is blocking it. Really shows that just having resources isn't enough, does it?
Exactly. It underlines that point perfectly.
And this isn't just about that program itself. It links to these bigger strategic reserves that are somehow locked away. What's the story there?
Well, yeah, the sources point to a major roadblock. There's a draft law, a parliamentary resolution meant to formalize Gold 3, but it got watered down. Crucially, they removed articles that would have allowed regulated mining in certain restricted zones.
Restricted zones with a lot of gold.
A lot of gold. Estimates are around 80.1 tons in those areas alone.
Whoa.
And the implication from the sources is that this removal happened because of, well, a lack of trust, either distrust in enforcement, maybe successful environmental lobbying, or just other political resistance. The bottom line is a huge amount of potential value is just off limits.
So sitting on a literal gold mine, but unable to access it because of politics, and the economic headaches don't stop with gold, right?
Yeah.
The sources talk about a big coal price crash.
Yeah.
How hard did that hit?
Oh, it was brutal. A 40% plunge in global coal prices. That basically blew a 3.3 trillion tugrek hole in the 2025 budget. That's about 960 million US dollars.
Ouch.
Yeah. It forced immediate, pretty severe austerity. They had to shelve most of those big 14 mega projects they'd planned. Things like the Bodkon Mountain Tunnel project just stopped.
A real blow to their development plans.
Definitely brought them screeching to a halt.
So that sounds like the fiscal reckoning the sources mentioned.
Yeah.
What did that massive budget hole mean financially right away?
Well, the revised budget flipped pretty dramatically, now projecting a deficit of 1.365 trillion tugrek. That's about 1.5% of GDP, a sharp reversal. And it's mostly driven by falling revenues, a 1.8 trillion drop in mineral royalties, and another 1.35 trillion slide in corporate taxes.
And the overall economy.
Reflects the stress. Only grew 2.4% in the first quarter, which is, pretty sluggish, far from what they need.
And how's it hitting ordinary people? Are they feeling it? You mentioned inflation and currency depreciation.
Absolutely. Inflation is still stubbornly high, over 9%. Way above the central bank's target. And maybe more visibly, the tugrek, their currency, it's taken a hit, slipped past 3,500 to the US dollar, now nearing 3,600.
So people are noticing that day to day.
Oh, yeah. It's not just a number. It sparked panic buying, actual shortages of US dollar cash as people try to convert their savings. It shows the immediate impact. The Bank of Mongolia reacted, hiked the policy rate to 12% back in March to try and stabilize things, but people are feeling the pinch.
Yeah, that sounds tough. So in this climate, what's the government doing? Any big tax reform proposals to try and ease the pain or maybe raise revenue?
There are proposals, yeah. The finance minister, Jeff Klein, he's pushing a package. Things like raising the threshold for corporate profit tax up to $10 billion tugrik, about $2.86 million, and lowering the rates. Plus, a new 1% turnover tax for small businesses,
That
SMEs.
sounds like a relief, potentially.
Potentially. But critics, according to the sources, argue it's expensive. Could cost the budget 4 trillion tugrik, that's like $1.1 billion over the next couple of years. And they say it's maybe just superficial relief, might actually increase reliance on borrowing from abroad rather than fixing the underlying fiscal problems.
Right. Okay, so from the big economic picture, let's zoom in on the ground. Mongolian mining is obviously central to all this, especially the huge Oyu Tolgoi copper mine. The sources mention a proposed parliamentary committee to oversee it. What's driving that?
That's right. MPs proposed a temporary oversight committee. It seems to be triggered by a UK lawsuit involving Rio Tinto, the operator. Allegations of bribery going back to 2008, 2012. Now, it's important to note the Mongolian government isn't part of that lawsuit.
So they won't get any of the settlement money. Rio Tinto settled with some shareholders, right?
Exactly. Rio Tinto settled with Turquoise Hill shareholders for about $139 million. Mongolia doesn't see any of that directly, so this committee's focus is really on Mongolia's own interests in the project going forward.
Okay, so if not the settlement, what is the committee focused on, especially regarding that massive shareholder loan?
That's a key target, scrutinizing the Oyu Tolgoi LLC shareholder loan. It's projected to hit, get this, $11.8 billion by mid-2025.
Billion, with a B.
With a B. And that includes $5.7 billion just in accrued interest. The interest rate itself is around 11.1% annually, which the sources say is significantly higher than market rates.
So the committee wants to renegotiate that.
Precisely. There's apparently an opportunity under the agreement to review and potentially reduce that rate by 2025. It could save Mongolia billions if they succeed.
And there's another layer here involving entree resources and some specific deposits near the main mine.
Yes, that's right. There was an international arbitration ruling late last year, December 2024. It confirmed Entree Resources has a 20% economic interest in certain adjacent licenses, which were then transferred into the main Oyu Tolgoi LLC structure. Mongolia sees this as a key moment, a chance to negotiate new terms for those specific zones. The state is entitled to either a 34% equity stake or potentially a higher royalty on the minerals there, copper, gold, molybdenum.
And it sounds like the government's playing hardball on this, taking a tough stance.
They are. The chief cabinet secretary, Utrol, made public statements, said Mongolia will take a strict legal approach. He explicitly rejected an 80-20 profit split model suggested by Entree, and he floated the possibility of the state taking up to 51% ownership in these specific strategic deposits. The message is clear. Negotiations have to stick strictly to Mongolian law, maximizing the national benefit.
Makes sense. And all this mining revenue, ideally, where is it supposed to go? The sources talk about the National Wealth Fund, the Chinggis Fund.
Right. The government wants to channel these revenues into that National Wealth Fund, or NWF. There is a plan outlined by the Prime Minister. 50% of royalties into long-term savings, the Future Heritage Fund, then 5% for stabilization, 5% for national development, and 15% for local projects. The long-term goal they're talking about is a kind of 3-3-3-3-3-3-3 split, future generations, citizen savings, and current development, a balanced approach in theory.
Interesting. And speaking of models, the sources highlight the Orano deal, the uranium deal with France, as maybe a new model.
Different from Oyu Tolgoi.
Very different, yeah. It's seen as a potential blueprint, this $1.6 billion deal for the Zuvshovud deposit with France's Orano. The key difference is it prioritizes higher royalties over the government taking a big chunk of equity. Mongolia keeps only a 10% preferential share, but it's guaranteed direct benefits of at least 51% of the project's revenues annually.
So less upfront risk and debt for the government. Exactly. The aim is to avoid the massive state debt issues they encountered with Oyu Tolgoi. Get immediate debt-free benefits, a steady revenue stream, without the financial burden of being a major equity partner.
Okay, let's shift gears from the vast mining areas to the capital, Ulaanbaatar. It seems to be facing some serious issues, energy, environment, starting with this TPP-3 fire. That sounds like it caused a major crisis.
It really did. A fire at the third thermal power plant, TPP-3, back in early June 2025. This plant is critical. It provides about a third of the city's district heating and maybe 16% of its electricity.
And it's an old plant.
Very old. Soviet era. The sources say it needs about USD 100 million just for turbine replacement. And that could take 2 years, maybe more. With winter always looming large in Ulaanbaatar, it really exposed how vulnerable the city's infrastructure is, especially its reliance on these aging power sources.
And part of the underlying problem is these subsidized tariffs, right? The plants are losing money.
Huge amounts. TPC-3, for example, produces heat at a cost of around 24,683 per gigacalorie. That's about $7. But it sells it for just 7,215, so about $2. Massive losses, millions of dollars every year.
Why not just raise the price?
Well, they plan to, but the government postponed the heating tariff hike until 2026. Worries about inflation pushing costs onto consumers right now, but it means the financial bleeding continues, making it even harder to find the money for those essential upgrades.
And then there's Ulaanbaatar's infamous air pollution and traffic. How bad is the air quality situation described in the sources?
It's dire. Winter PM 2.5 levels, that's the really nasty fine particulate matter, routinely exceed World Health Organization limits by 27 times.
27 times, wow.
Yeah. And it's primarily from coal-burning stoves in the Darur districts. Those are the large, sort of informal settlements with traditional dwellings around the city center. The government pushed this refined coal initiative, trying to provide a cleaner alternative through subsidies, but the results have been mixed. It even led to a huge loss, 1.2 trillion tugrik, or $353 million at the state company producing it, Tevan Tolgoi Fuel.
And traffic's getting worse, too.
Apparently so. Major congestion problems. And proposed solutions like vehicle tax hikes, tripling the fee for popular cars like the Prius, just add to public frustration. It sounds like a difficult place to live, especially in winter.
So are they exploring other options? What about the gas subsidy program mentioned?
They are trying that. It offers about MNT 100,000, roughly $29 a month, to households in the Gur districts during the heating season, September to May. The idea is to get people to switch from coal to gas heating. Projections say gas could be 5 to 20 times cheaper for them and obviously much cleaner.
But that creates a new dependency, doesn't it?
It does. Reliance on imported natural gas, and currently that mostly means Russia. So it swaps one problem pollution for another potential vulnerability in energy security.
Okay, shifting from infrastructure to politics. Mongolia seems to be in a period of, well, significant political volatility, but also trying some governance reforms. The sources jump right in with the dramatic dismissal of Prime Minister Oyun Erdene. What happened there?
Yeah, that was a major shakeup. Really exposed the fault lines within the ruling party, the Mongolian People's Party, or MPP. PM Oyun Erdene was ousted in a no-confidence vote on June 3rd, 2025.
What triggered it?
It seems to have followed intense public anger over alleged corruption. Specifically, revelations about his son's supposedly lavish spending overseas really hit a nerve. It tapped into broader discontent about elite privilege and, potential misuse of funds.
And they moved quickly to replace him. A new prime minister, Zandan.
Very quickly. Gambojavan Zanjanchatar was confirmed just 10 days later, June 13th. Got overwhelming support, 93% of the votes. The sources frame his appointment as a kind of generational consensus pick, someone chosen for stability, to try and calm things down.
And the new government, what does it look like?
It's heavily dominated by the ruling MPP. They hold 16 out of 19 cabinet seats. Interestingly, the main opposition, the Democratic Party, was dropped from the coalition, but they brought in a couple of smaller parties, HUN and the Civil Will Green Party, so a bit of a reshuffle in alliances.
And this new PM Zandan, he seemed to be acting fast on the economy. There's mention of a sweeping fiscal consolidation plan.
Right out of the gate, yeah. Days after taking office, his cabinet unveiled this big plan, aiming to eliminate a projected budget shortfall of $2.3 trillion. That's around $660 million.
What are the main measures?
Pretty drastic stuff. Cutting 14,400 civil service jobs by 2026. That's nearly 9% of the state workforce. And also abolishing 30 different national councils and committees, trying to slash bureaucracy and overheads. It signals a serious intent to tackle the fiscal crisis head-on.
But even with new leadership, scandals seem to persist. There's something about the new education minister.
Correct. Purab Surenjan Naranbayar. He's from that smaller HUN party brought into the coalition. He's facing allegations of mismanaging about MNT 1.2 billion, roughly $350,000, through an NGO he was involved with.
Is he likely to be dismissed?
Well, some MPP members are demanding it, but other sources kind of caution that the allegations might be inflated, possibly being used as political ammunition in the new coalition dynamics, so it's a bit murky. Shows the politicking continues.
And what about the bigger picture? Judicial and anti-corruption efforts. Are they making progress on those systemic issues?
It's a very challenging area based on the sources. The former PM, Oyun Erdene, before he was ousted, actually made public accusations against senior judges, including the Chief Justice, Ganzorig, accused them of systemic corruption, shielding dodgy land deals.
That's quite an accusation from a sitting PM.
It is, and it comes against a backdrop where Mongolia's press freedom ranking has plummeted from 54th globally in 2015 down to 90th in 2024, and its score on the Corruption Perceptions Index is just stagnant at 33 out of 100. So the data and the high-level accusations paint a picture of, deeply entrenched corruption problems, a major hurdle for real reform.
Are there legal tools being developed, like this illicit asset recovery law?
Yes, there's a draft law on that. It aims to recover assets acquired illicitly, but through civil court proceedings. The key things are, it wouldn't require a criminal conviction first, and it could be applied retroactively way back to 2002.
So potentially easier to claw back stolen assets.
That's the goal, to get around the really high burden of proof needed in criminal corruption cases, which often makes convictions difficult.
Then there's this other thing, the productivity managers controversy. What's that about? Sounds a bit strange.
It's quite contentious, yeah. The government appointed 400 of these productivity managers into 123 state-owned companies. And they're paid pretty well, $5 to $6 million a month. That's maybe $1,400 to $1,700.
400 of them. What's the total cost?
Adds up to around $30 billion a year for the budget, about $8 million. And it's drawn widespread criticism. Many sources see it as basically political patronage, appointing loyalists to cushy jobs. Skepticism about whether they actually boost productivity is high.
So it kind of undermines the reform message.
It definitely raises questions, shows the difficulty of genuine reform when initiatives can get tangled up with concerns about political appointments and cronyism.
Okay, finally, let's look outwards. Mongolia's shifting foreign policy. Always that delicate balancing act between Russia and China, plus their third neighbors. How are they deepening ties with Russia and the EAE?
Well, there's a plan to sign a temporary free trade agreement with the Eurasian Economic Union, that's Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, in June 2025. So very soon. It's a clear move to strengthen commercial links with that bloc. Probably strategically important given, global trade uncertainties. Securing access to those markets.
And a specific deal with Russia's Rosneft for jet fuel.
Yes, a proposed 20-year deal for Rosneft to supply jet fuel to the main international airport, Chinggis Khan. But it's facing criticism, concerns about creating overdependence on Russia for something so critical, and also that it might block any potential for Mongolia to develop its own domestic refining capacity, basically locking in a Russian monopoly.
What about that massive pipeline project, Power of Siberia 2? Is that moving forward?
It seems talks between China and Russia might be reviving. That pipeline is planned to run right through Mongolia. If it goes ahead, it would obviously further cement Mongolia's position as a key transit country in that Russia-China energy relationship.
But at the same time, they're making a big embrace of China, too, especially in infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. Mongolia ratified a major agreement with China back in March 2025. It covers the cross-border railway, Gashun-Sukait-Gensmad, or GSK-GMD, and also expansion of the big Tavan Tolgoi coal mine.
Aimed at boosting coal exports to China.
Primarily, yes. But again, there are those underlying concerns about strategic autonomy, about giving China too much leverage. The sources mention China is already pushing for the most competitive price on coal, which, usually means the lowest price, highlighting potential pressure points down the line.
It really does sound like a constant balancing act. So how's that third neighbor policy working in practice? Are they managing to diversify?
They are trying. It's a core part of their strategy. That urano-uranium deal with France we discussed, that's a prime example. Actively building partnerships beyond just Moscow and Beijing. And they're also exploring other avenues, like potentially exporting coal and copper to India, using that new Vladivostok-Chennai maritime corridor that Russia and India are developing. So definite signs of actively trying to broaden their options and reduce dependency on the two giants next door.
So, wrapping this up, we've seen Mongolia, a country with just immense potential, but really grappling with this complex mix. Economic pressures, big political shifts, critical social challenges like energy and pollution. From the gold under the ground to the air in Ulaanbaatar, the sources you shared, they paint a picture of a nation truly at a crossroads, don't they?
They really do. And if you connect all these dots, the data, the reports, They starkly show that just having ambition, just having resources, well, it doesn't automatically fill the government's bank account or stabilize the currency. The difference between, seizing a potential golden age and maybe staying stuck seems to hinge on political will.
Yeah.
The will to turn goals into actual policy and, crucially, to push that policy through resistance, both administrative and political, even when it means confronting powerful vested interests.
That really leaves a big question hanging, doesn't it? For you, our listeners, to think about. In a country so rich in resources, facing such urgent needs, what will it actually take? What will it take for Mongolia to consistently choose transparent governance, equitable wealth distribution over maybe short-term political wins, or just appeasing powerful groups? Something to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive.